Shalom from Jerusalem. This is Uriel, Independent News, Yerushalayim, Israel. Sir, what do you think about tensions here in the Middle East?
I think that the tension is a little blown out of proportion. I don't think it's as bad as people say. You walk the streets of Jerusalem, you hear French, English, of course Hebrew, and also a lot of people speaking Arabic. I went to the movies in the Rav Chen cinema, and about half the auditorium was Israeli Arabs, and they were treated just as well, and we felt very comfortable.
Now, tensions over in Egypt. As you know, the Muslim Brotherhood was in power, headed by Mohammed Morsi. And yesterday, the Muslim Brotherhood claimed that they were the ones behind the attack of the Israeli IDF patrol near the Egyptian-Israeli border. Do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood should be attacking Israel?
No, of course not. And I'm very happy that actually the Egyptian army is in control, because as you heard the news, like we all did, they're actually cleaning up the Sinai, and Israeli news reported they're actually closing the tunnels from Gaza. So I think indirectly this is the best news that ever happened.
Now, let me tell you something. The Muslim Brotherhood has been a great supporter of Hamas terrorists in the Gaza Strip. As you know, they are basically friends. And the news that I am aware of is that the Muslim Brotherhood had asked for the Gaza Strip terrorists to come in and basically help them with the uprising against the military. What do you think that the Egyptian army should do to basically bring this escalation down?
Well, the news also said that the envoy from the United States, Aston, is coming in. So I think that's what's on his mind today, and hopefully they're going to be able to fix that problem. But Israel, of course, should not get involved in the Sinai. We have to preserve what we have, and I'm more worried about the northern front, because yesterday actually a shell hit Israel. So let's hope for peace in the Middle East.
Now, Senator John McCain and Senator Graham of America has stated that America should stop any aid going to Egypt until that situation is resolved within Egypt. You think that America should stop the aid that is going towards Egypt?
I think they should put it on hold until they decide what they're going to do. If they want a military rule, then it's got to be down in paper and not keep having another government come in. I'm actually disappointed that America did not support Mubarak, because Mubarak really, whether you were for him or not, the bottom line is to let him, after he was overpowered, and to let him just rot in prison, I think was not a good deal.
Now, let's touch a little here on Iran. Iran continues to develop these nuclear facilities, and basically they're already built, and they're trying to enrich uranium, which they are. And now they're saying that news coming out of Tehran is that they might be also enriching plutonium. Now, if they get their hands on a nuclear weapon, they have already stated they will not hesitate to destroy Israel. You think that America should do a preemptive strike, or do you think that Israel should go at it alone?
I think Israel needs to do it because America, as an American citizen, America's tied up with too many other things. Now they're withdrawing from Afghanistan, and the American people don't really understand the real threat. Living in Israel, as you can see right here in front of the Central Synagogue, unfortunately, we were never loved over the years, and therefore I think Israel needs to do it. And Netanyahu kind of hinted to it that today again. He spoke and he said pretty much that Israel will have to do what it has to do. So I don't think we should depend or expect America to do it. I think that's out of their line. But let's hope, of course, that they understand when we do it.
Now, John Kerry is trying to broker a so-called peace agreement with the so-called Palestinians. As you know or may not know, that Abu Mazen continues to support terror against Israel. He has even named streets for terrorists that have killed many civilian Jews. Do you think that Israel should negotiate with a known supporter of terrorism against Israel?
We are really against that. Talking to terrorists, America, that was their policy. But in the world we live today, unfortunately, we realize that sometimes you have to break the rule in order to try to get a peace. So I think the way to go is, Kerry, I know a lot of people in the country are very upset with it. There'll probably be protests eventually. But I think without trying to get peace, even if you have to talk with a bad person, then you still have to do it. I'm a personal school teacher for 30 years in Atlanta, Georgia. And a lot of times, sometimes teachers don't know how to approach somebody, and they feel automatically if a kid is unruly, that's it. You just give him a consequence or a punishment. So I think it's the same thing. Of course, we don't want to deal with terrorism, but we don't want people buried. Yesterday, I attended a memorial for Jonathan Levine. Okay, if you heard of him. Okay, who was killed. Michael Levine from Baltimore. It was very emotional, and when you stay there and you see all the families crying, you realize that we got to do whatever we can. Israel always says, Oseh Shalom Bimromav, God makes peace in the heavens, but I think we need to act and do whatever we can.
On a final note, Israel cannot continue to give up more land. Almost 10,000 Jews were displaced from Gush Katif, and these so-called Arab Palestinian leaders want more land. Judea and Samaria are basically on the negotiating block, and they want to basically take more land and more land until they really conquer the entire land of Israel and drive us Jews out to the sea. Should Israel negotiate land for peace?
I think at this time, no, until more is shown from their side. They really have to show that what we did till now, they're really going to keep the peace. When I was here in November, okay, this past year, there were rockets all over Israel, as we shouldn't forget, and now we're relatively calm. So I think that shows that things have calmed down, but I think more needs to be done, and their leaders need to do it, and then I'm sure we'll be standing here, and then we'll be even shaking hands with people who are not necessarily, Israeli.
But these so-called Palestinians won't even recognize a Jewish state or nation. So how can someone or a government negotiate with someone that basically won't even recognize who you are?
That is a problem, and our leaders are, but obviously our government is negotiating and willing to negotiate, and they're the ones that they elected in a democratic state as opposed to the lands around us. And I think that they're the ones we should support, and I'm sorry that a lot of people in Israel, and I understand they live here, and they feel the threat. But they need to realize they elected their government, and if the government says that they need to do this step, we have to support them 100% of the way.
This is Uriel, Independent News, Jerusalem, Israel.